I am Curran. This is Ask the Experts, speaking with veteran referee Jack Reiss. You've been seeing his face everywhere, it seems like, in terms of big fights. So, Jack, I'm sure you're always busy with big primetime fights, but it just so happened that the last 2 weeks, December 21st and December 28th, you were refereeing big main event fights that ended in stoppages. And so I guess my first question is how are you feeling after the back-to-back weeks?
Oh, it's great. I'm so fortunate to be able to do that stuff, and people are calling upon me to do these fights. I'm blessed.
And you had some high-profile matchups, and they actually both ended in stoppages. So we'll get into those. So let's start with Charlo-Harrison, the rematch. It was on December 21st. And my first question is, how do you deal with two guys who really don't like each other? There was a lot of smack talk before the fight, and these guys are not friendly in any way. So does that change your job at all as a referee?
It just makes it more difficult, and you got to anticipate what could possibly happen. And, I'm blessed to have what I feel is the best commission in the entire world right now. And everybody was aware of the high tension between these guys. And I'm going to tell you a backstory that I don't think the fans know. The promoters were so worried that these two guys would have an incident prior to the fight. They hired a backup fighter, paid him to stand by and be ready to fight in case one of them hurt the other one at a press conference or to weigh-in.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you're saying Jermell Charlo and Tony Harrison didn't like each other so much that the promoter had someone standing by to step in case there was a brawl or an injury or something like that?
Absolutely. A professional fighter who
Wow.
now has another fight coming up
Yeah.
was the standby fighter in case one of them hurt the other in an altercation before they got in the ring.
That's really interesting. Now, I'm guessing, I'm going to have to ask, but I'm guessing you can't tell us who it was, the backup fighter.
I don't want to, because I don't want to put myself in a position in case they wouldn't have wanted me to tell you.
Sure. But wow, that's really interesting. I actually, that's the first time I'm hearing about that, but that does seem smart based on the bad blood. There was bad blood because these guys fought a year ago. Afterwards, Harrison and went over to congratulate Jermell. Jermell said that Harrison said that everyone knew he won, and that started this whole thing. So these guys didn't like each other. It made your job more difficult. So the fight starts, and it was an interesting.
Can we go back? And
yeah, please.
What you said.
Yeah.
So how it changes for me is I've got to do a little bit more legwork on the front end to try to prevent this stuff. My commission was aware of what was going on, obviously, and we put some of the strongest inspectors we have in both corners, so a melee wouldn't start in the ring. They would be able to stop anybody from the corners from jumping in the ring and be able to control the fighters if it came down to that. And my commission also let them know that we're not going to allow that kind of stuff to happen in California. You're going to be looking at heavy fines and suspensions and all that stuff. And with me on the front end, what I did was I went to both of them and I appealed to them in a respectful manner. Look, you sold the fight. I know you don't like each other, and the reality is, I told them both, you're both very clean, high-level, talented fighters. Don't mar this up with some kind of incident. Go in there and fight the way you know how without doing anything illegal, because if you do, you're forcing my hand to do something that could cost you money, could cause you suspension, cost you time off from the sport. I said, so let's just put all that behind us. And to both of their credits, they both fought very clean.
And, that makes a lot of sense because even though they don't like each other, you're all kind of in this together in terms of you all, the fighters want to put on a good show for the fans. They want to get paid. And it's not going to be in anyone's benefit if there's, some illegal moves used or if someone gets injured before the fight or anything like that. That's not going to be in anyone's benefit. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. So the fight starts, and I'm just curious, just to get your mindset as a referee. There's so much hype coming into this fight. Do you have any preconceived thoughts about, hey, this is this guy's style, this is this other guy's style, this is stuff I'm going to look out for? I'm just curious, as your preparation as a referee, especially when it's a rematch, do you look at the first fight just to take notes? What is your approach there?
Absolutely. I do my homework, Curran. I want to see tendencies. I want to see if one guy holds too much or fouls in a certain way or does anything that's going to create a problem for me by fouling his opponent. Like, I'll give you a great example. Charlo, and I addressed this in the dressing room. Charlo likes to throw wide overhand rights. So the problem could be is if Harrison slightly turns his head and it ends up hitting behind the head, I've got to make an instantaneous decision. Was it Charlo's wide illegal punch, or did Harrison contribute by turning his head? And that has to be done instantaneously. So I had a heightened sense of awareness to this stuff, and I also just told Charlo in the dressing room, when you're throwing that punch, just make sure you hit him with the legal part of the hand to make sure it's not with this stuff, it's with this stuff. And other things like that, with guys stepping on each other's feet and things like that, I wanted to make sure we had a righty against a lefty. There would have been heads colliding, feet being stepped on. So I'm always studying to see the styles to give me an overall view or a general idea of what I'm going to be confronted with.
No, and that makes a ton of sense. That you're kind of thinking ahead in that way and warning these guys about what could happen, because we all know that these things definitely do happen. So in the first round, it's kind of an even fight, and Charlo did come out with those big looping hands. He came out very aggressive. Second round, Harrison goes down. Now, when you're observing him go down, he popped right back up. What is that like for you? Because we've seen fighters, sometimes they pop right back up and they don't have their wits about them. Like, obviously everyone remembers Zab Judah versus Costa Tszyu. When he went down, he got up, he couldn't stay up. Yeah. So what are you doing? Because you obviously want to get in there, you want to start your count, but you don't know if that guy might pop right back up and start kind of falling over. So what's your process there?
Well, first of all, on any knockdown, as a referee, I have a mandatory 8 count. So when he gets up, even if he gets up at 2, I have to count to 8 and assess him all along that process. So when he went down and popped up, a couple of things that are going through my mind anyway is it's early in the fight. He hasn't taken much damage. As Joe Cortez used to say, he's got a full tank of gas early in the fight. I'm definitely going to give him the benefit of the doubt unless he demonstrates to me that there's something that makes me worry about his ability to protect himself. Harrison popped up. I gave him a quick look. He was talking to me. His body language was perfect. We're going on. We're moving on.
And no, that is definitely the right call there. He looked totally fine in terms of it wasn't a flash knockdown. It was still a good knockdown, but it was in that same way he got right back up. And I'm glad that
his body language was steady on his feet, no problem. It wasn't like he got up and he was stiff like you were saying with Zab Judah.
Yeah.
He got back up and he was more annoyed than anything else that he got himself knocked down. And he was talking to me. Look, I'm good, I'm fine, whatever.
And it's always good to see the communication. We can always hear you on the broadcast asking very clearly, are you okay? Seeing how the guy reacts. So the fight.
Curran, can I just tell you one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I want the fans to know this.
Yeah.
In the dressing room, in my pre-fight instructions, I tell them, my job is not to assume you're okay. You have to prove to me you're okay. So if you're laying on the ropes and you're not doing anything, I'm going to be barking out some commands, follow my commands, so I know you're thinking. And when you get knocked down, when you get up, I'm going to say, are you okay? And I want you to physically say yes and also go like this, yes. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to say, do you want to continue? And you have to go, yes, because I want the doctors, the commission, and the fans to see you're communicating with me because I'm about to let you go on. If they stand there looking at me like this, they're telling me they're done. They're either doing it on purpose or they really are done.
Right. They may not be able to answer you because they're hurt, or they may inside want to quit without saying that. And that makes sense from your perspective. And I'm glad that you tell these people that beforehand so that everyone can be on the same page. So the fight continues, and Harrison won the first fight, as we know, but it was controversial, you could say. It still felt like Charlo was the favorite, even though he wasn't the champion here. Harrison was doing his thing, and the announcers were saying that they felt like he was winning a lot of rounds. I'm just curious, when you're watching two guys like this, are you thinking in your head, this fighter's winning this fight, this other fighter's winning this fight, or are you just watching the action unfold and looking to when you have to kind of jump in there?
You froze up, but I believe I know what you're asking.
Sure.
And I'm absolutely doing my very best to see who's winning. I'm keeping 2 scales in my head.
Sure.
Who's hurt or not, and fouls. And then the third scale is who I think is ahead or not, and for a couple of reasons. Is it lopsided? Can this guy no longer win mathematically on the card? Which is what I had the other day with Gamboa. In my mind, he had lost every round. So on that knockdown, I didn't even think twice. It's over. It's unnecessary to let him go on. But in this case, I was keeping score mentally, and the scores, in my opinion, Harrison was either very close or winning that fight. So another thing I want to tell you that the California Athletic Commission is very progressive on is in the 8th and 10th round of championship fights, we hand the scorecards in, go check the corners, and they're going to be handing us back the scores to let us know if it's lopsided or not. Because again, it's one little tool that we have to pull a fighter out when he can no longer mathematically win the fight, doesn't have a puncher's chance, he's too strong for his own good, and his corner's too stupid to pull him out. So it's just one little extra thing that we have. It doesn't weigh 100% on what we do, but it's a good tool.
So that's really interesting. I didn't know that. So in California, in the 8th and 10th round of championship fights, the referee knows who is winning and losing the fight. And I say that's interesting because in theory, the judges, obviously they can keep a mental track, but they're scoring it round by round. So you're one of the few people as a referee who knows who is winning or losing the fight late in a fight, right? In a championship fight.
We've just instituted this process. It's in the incipient stages. And yes, they will be handing it to me and the referees for the sole purpose of letting us know if it's a blowout or not, to say maybe this kid who's on the losing end of that blowout has had enough. Well, if it's even, if it's close, I don't even think they're going to give it to us. They haven't decided yet.
Gotcha. Well,
not giving it to us says it's competitive, but if they hand it to us, they're trying to tell us, Jack, you might want to watch this guy.
Well, if that helps,
I got to tell you something too. Yeah. I have conversations with the doctors every round.
Right.
Every round after I walk around, I do a flyby the corner. I go to the doctor. I give my opinion. The doctor gives their opinion. If I go like this and I go, Doc, he's fine, and the doctor goes, I'm worried about so and so, we're going to have a conversation because maybe I'm missing something.
No, that's great that you are communicating, and I like the adding the scorecards element, because if that helps fighter safety, which is something I've been talking about a lot, then I am definitely 100% for it, and I could see why that would help fighter safety, and we'll get into the Gamboa fight in a sec. But I wanted to talk about the end of the Harrison fight, and before I get to the knockdowns, there was moments there mid to late rounds where Harrison started showboating a little bit. Now, Charlo would land a 2 to 3 punch combination. Some punches would land, some wouldn't. And then Harrison would kind of showboat to say, I'm not hurt. I'm curious what are the rules with showboating? Is showboating allowed? As a referee, are you supposed to kind of tone down showboating? Because I remember a time, one random example, I'm sure there are many, but, for example, Sergio Martinez was fighting, and he always fights with his hands down. And I think it was Arthur Mercanti Jr. at the time was the referee, and I remember him saying, stop showboating, don't showboat. But in theory, is showboating against the rules? Is that something that a referee should step in and say, hey, don't do this?
Well, unsportsmanlike conduct is against the rules. And I'm going to tell you something. This is where experience as a referee comes in. So I'm not a fool. If a guy showboats and the crowd's roaring from it, why do I want to stop it if it's helping and enhancing boxing?
Right.
When it becomes excessive or puts the fighter in a dangerous position or deteriorates from the professionalism of the fight, I'm going to step in if it's excessive. But if a guy takes a couple of good shots and he showboats, you know what my thought is? Oh, that hurt him and he's trying to make like it didn't.
Right.
A lot of guys showboat because they are hurt and they did feel it, but they're trying to stall and let them make the other guy think that it didn't hurt. And I got to tell you, when Harrison was doing it, he wasn't throwing anything back. And I was wondering why he had kind of like taken off those middle rounds when he was doing a lot of that showboating and not really throwing anything back. I didn't know if he was out of gas. I didn't know if he was having a mental lapse. I didn't know what he was doing. But it wasn't deteriorating from the fight, so I let it go. And the other thing I didn't understand, Charlo landed those punches and they thumped him. a couple of those body shots thumped him, and then Harrison starts shaking his tail, and I'm thinking, why didn't Charlo jump on him?
Right.
Why didn't Charlo just go charging in and jumping on him? Because it's a story, it's a scene, it's a play, right? I don't want to stop it. It's part of the play. Unless it becomes excessive, deteriorates from the professionalism, or causes some kind of problem.
Right. No, and that makes a lot of sense. A lot of fighters start showboating to when they are hurt to make it seem like they're not hurt, to kind of sell it to the judges in that way. And that makes sense. And it definitely is part of the story.
Curran,
and
a lot of the Curran sorry, I interrupt you a lot, and I apologize.
No, please go ahead.
Something across. A lot of the referees don't understand. It's a fight. It's not tennis.
Right.
Football players do the walk after they score a touchdown. Tennis players will spin their tennis racket, or hockey players will pump their arm and stuff like that. You got to let that kind of stuff happen. It's part of the play, as long as it don't become obsessive. And as a referee, if I can give one message to any young referees, it's not about you. It's let them do what they're going to do if it doesn't interrupt the fight.
No, and that is definitely part of the sport. And to your other point, Charlo didn't rush in. They made that point on the broadcast many times. Maybe he was feeling like Harrison was playing possum or something, but he chose not to. But he was able to execute on his game plan in round 11. He drops Harrison, and Harrison looks a lot more hurt this first knockdown in round 11 than he did back in the second round. So when he first went down in round 11, what was going through your head? Was there any thoughts at that moment to stop it? I know that Harrison's the champion, and you've said before that you want to give the champion a chance to defend his belt. So what was going through your head in that first knockdown in round 11?
Well, let me give you a general theory first. I try to get in the ring and stay out of the way and let them fight. But when a fighter gets knocked down, now I got to put him on a rope. And if he gets knocked down again, especially in the same round, I'm going to really tighten that rope. So that's exactly what I had. He got dropped. He got up. He demonstrated to me he can intelligently defend himself. And I was assured of that, so I let him go. Then when he got dropped again, I wanted to see what I had, want to count out a champion, signal down. He got up. He demonstrated to me verbally, but not so perfectly physically, that he can continue. So I shortened my distance and stayed as close as I possibly could, and I evaluated what he was going to do after that second knockdown. And what he did after that second knockdown was basically move in a really unorthodox manner, not have any offense in mind, didn't run, didn't hold. And as soon as Charlo was comfortable and got him against the ropes, he just covered up and laid back. That is not competitive. That is not intelligently defend himself. And that's why when he took 4 or 5 punches, they weren't hard. They didn't hurt him, but he wasn't. His reaction after the knockdown demonstrated to me he wasn't all there. And letting him go, to me, felt like it was unnecessary. There are people that said, and I respect their opinion, I should have stopped it after that second knockdown. But I'm the guy in the ring, just like when someone else is in the ring. I want the fight to go to a definitive ending without jeopardizing safety, so that, to lessen the controversy. I also want to give a fighter his due chance. It's a world title bout. And yes, he did not have a full gas tank anymore in the 11th, but I felt he was really competitive. He might have been winning that fight, and to stop it too quick would have created worse controversy. So I gave him a little bit of a shorter rope, and then he didn't demonstrate to me that he was all there. So as soon as he started taking any shots, I stopped it.
And he was actually ahead on one of the scorecards. That's before, obviously, all the knockdowns in round 11. But so, and I definitely wanted to ask you about the end of the fight. But the second knockdown in round 11, and to your point, whenever there's multiple knockdowns, there's going to be people with opinions who say, oh, you should have stopped it here or there or there. And it's very different for us watching at home versus being that person in that moment. And you have fighters' careers at stake and their lives at stake, and you have to make a split-second decision. So when he went down that second time in round 11, you rushed in. Was there a chance in your head that you were going to stop it right then, or did you know that you were going to kind of evaluate and give him a chance to get back up that second knockdown in round 11?
I went in anticipating that when I was signaling down, he wasn't going to be getting up. So I was going to count him out, or if he fell on his face from that fall, I was just going to wave it off.
Right.
But he surprised me and everybody else by getting up and recovering and stuff like that. And again, so I gave him an opportunity to prove that he can intelligently defend himself, and his body language did not demonstrate it from the second knockdown on. So as soon as he was pinned and didn't really do much, even though he didn't take heavy shots, it was unnecessary.
And
because my opinion, he would have.
No, and that makes sense. You gave him the chance to get up, and he did surprise everyone.
That's exactly right. I gave him every opportunity I could without letting him get hurt. So look, the people are going to criticize if I would have stopped it on the second knockdown, and people are criticizing. It just comes with the game. It's part of the game for me.
It's part of the territory.
Funny, Curran, what's funny? Here's how I'm going to answer it. Okay?
Yeah.
People are always criticizing what the referee does.
Right.
If the promoters and the commissions are still hiring that referee and continue to use them, it says it all.
No, it says that you're doing something right, and you
that
definitely
they're comfortable with.
Did a great job on this particular fight and the next one that we'll talk about. And I tweeted about that, and I said Jack Reiss did a great job, and I told you that.
Thank you.
Afterwards. Harrison did surprise everyone when he got up, and you know who else he surprised? Charlo, because Charlo was on the turnbuckle there in the corner celebrating. So as you're counting Harrison, when did you first notice that Charlo had his back to you and he was celebrating? And what is the protocol there for you as a referee?
Really good question. So on a normal knockdown, you signal down, you send the standing fighter to the furthest corner or neutral corner, pick up the count from the timekeeper and count. And the best thing you could do is keep both guys in your view. You should be able to see this guy through your peripheral vision as you're counting on this guy. But there's times when I don't really care about this guy.
Right.
Because all I want to do is witness this guy's condition. And I've got to tell you, the first 4 or 5 seconds of a hard knockdown are the telltale sign of what the guy's condition is. So sometimes I don't even pick up the count from the timekeeper. I'll do my own count because that's the official count anyway, so I can keep and maintain my vision and assess that guy's physical condition. This was one of those knockdowns. I jumped in, and I think why Charlo got confused was because he was really aggressive on him on the ropes. And I jumped in and gave him a hip check to get him out of there. He thought I was stopping the fight, but I really had to get him off of him. So it wasn't like I came in and just gently pushed him and sat down. I had to first get him off, and then I went down. And I think when I pushed him off, he turned to his left and never saw me pointing down. He thought I was stopping the fight.
Right.
So he was doing what he was doing. And then when I said, "Hey, you okay? Walk this way, ready to go," and I had my hand like this, I turned to see where Charlo was. That was the first clue I got that he thought it was over. And to be all honest with you, I don't know if you realize that an inspector thought it was over and came in the ring too.
Right.
But we got that all straightened out, and they went on. And Charlo told me candidly he thought I'd let it go too long. I said, "That's okay. You do your fight, and I'll do my reffing. And if you're down, I'll give you the same opportunity." He started cracking up.
Right. And that makes sense that you keep your eye on the guy who's going down, because that's crucial moments there. Not only for his
4 or 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's crucial moments, not only for his health, but also for if there is an opportunity for him to continue, that you really need to focus on what's going on there. And that makes a lot of sense. So Harrison got up. He's running like you said, in an unorthodox way. He's defending and he's not throwing at all. I didn't see one punch there. I saw him covering up.
Exactly.
And so you stop it, and then Harrison, we can see it on the broadcast. He's saying, no, right? What was he saying to you there, and how did you respond?
He was saying, no, I can go, or something like that. And I said, "You're done. There's no way. You watch the tape." And I just wanted to hold him by the ropes. And it was the heat of the battle for him. It was the heat of the moment. I understand it. And I really appreciate his professionalism, because I guess his father and other people told him that, you really didn't do anything, didn't respond. Because afterward he said, "I got no problem with Jack Reiss. He stopped it for my health and safety," and blah, 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 blah. So they get it. In the heat of battle, it's different than afterward when you think about it.
No, when the adrenaline comes down a little bit and you have a moment to think, and I tweeted this, that I give Harrison 1,000,000% credit because he was respectful in the post-fight comments, and he said that it was the correct knockdown, the correct stoppage. He made no excuses at all. And he agreed with your decision, as did I. And I put out actually a poll on Twitter. 46% of people said they agreed with your decision. Only 21% said it should have been sooner. 31% said it should have been later. Like we said, everyone's going to have an opinion when there's multiple knockdowns. But bottom line, I think everyone realizes that it was a well-ref fight, and the right guy ended up winning, which is the most important thing. And both fighters get to go home healthy, and that is also just as important, if not more important, there.
You said two of the most important things, that the right guy won and they both go home healthy. That's after that, there's nothing else that matters. But I want you to know it was the right guy won. Right. And like you said, they both got to go home. I gave them every opportunity, every chance, and the fans got their money's worth without a big controversy of saying, the referee screwed this up. But here's what's funny. In the same instance, I don't remember what you said, 45, whatever percent said I did it right.
Yeah, 46.9.
And then 21% said I should have let it go longer. You can't have it both ways. Right. So I look at the uneducated fan that doesn't realize he got knocked down twice really hard. It's 11 rounds. The gas tank's a little bit empty. And after that second knockdown, he didn't do anything intelligent. He should have ran or held. You not just kind of move it slowly like that and then lay on the ropes. Or we would have let it go. So the 46%, I give them kudos. They got it. They understood it.
No, if you're standing there and you're not throwing anything at all, that's a problem. And like you said, I think you said it was intelligently defending yourself, and I think that's the key word there. So I wanted to also talk about Tank Davis versus Yuriorkis Gamboa. So you had this amazing fight of the year candidate, and then you're back out there now going to Atlanta this time. What was you spoke about the mindset in terms of the two guys not liking each other, in terms of Charlo-Harrison. What was the prep, the mindset for Tank Gamboa? These are smaller guys. So what was the prep going into it? And also, does it make it easier for you when it's smaller guys? Is that easier to kind of get in there and move these guys, or push one guy to the corner and things like that?
Well, they're highly trained athletes and they're really strong and tough. It makes a difference on how I move them compared to heavyweights.
Right.
But these two guys were determined young little bucks, and I don't know if you saw Gamboa shoving my arm and Tank running behind me. They wanted at each other. But as far as the preparation goes, again, I did my homework. I had a righty against a lefty. I had a 25-year-old kid that's on the way up against a 38-year-old man that I'm not saying it was my thought, but possibly had seen his better days, earlier in his career, and a little bit of inactivity, a knockout, before that. So one of my concerns was, what has this guy got left to bring to the table?
Right.
So that was always my concern. But then at the weigh-in, don't know if you saw all that, what happened at the weigh-in, Tank, two things happened. The weigh-in was supposed to be 2:00. Davis didn't show up till 4:00. He was 2 hours late, and I heard behind the scenes he's overweight. He's trying to cut the weight. Someone, I don't know how true it is, they said he's 5 pounds overweight. And I went, 5 pounds overweight on the day of the fight? Wow. So he finally shows up. He's starving. He's kept the other guy waiting, and all these 1,000 people were there between the fans. It was free, and all the people trying to facilitate the fight, and Jimmy Lennon and everybody. And he kept us all waiting. He gets on the scale. He's still 1.2 pounds overweight. And then they're doing the face-off, and he shoves Gamboa.
Right.
And a potential riot breaks out because we were in close quarters. There wasn't a lot of punches being thrown, but there were some very big guys, and a lot of people rushed the stage. And I lost you for a second. A lot of people rushed the stage, and people were getting stepped on. People got knocked down or getting stepped on. I was trying to protect one of the female inspectors that were on the stage. Me and Bill Clancy, put her behind us. And what we were doing was standing there, and when the crowd would get to us, we were just shoving them away from us to keep our little cubby hole. And it lasted a good 2 minutes. The thing kept going. And what really was my concern was there was one a Georgia police officer alone, and he had a gun. And I'm thinking, if somebody grabs that guy's gun, this could be ugly. And, thank God cooler heads ruled and cooler heads prevailed, and it didn't go that way. But the telltale part of it is I'm saying, Tank had to lose a lot of weight. He's grumpy. He's miserable.
Right.
And now this is what's going on. And then he was 1.2 pounds overweight, and the commission was trying to sanction him, saying, we're not giving you the time to make the weight. This is a non-title fight. The sanctioning body allowed him an hour. He came back an hour later. He made the weight. So I'm saying to myself, he just lost like 5 pounds. Is he going to be empty in the fight from losing 5 pounds in 3 hours? So those are the things that went through my mind.
And I'm guessing there was no backup opponent for this one then.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
There might have been. Maybe the promoter always does have something like that going on.
Right.
But I did not hear about it or see it in this particular thing.
No, and the weight issues obviously can explain, not that, it was a competitive fight, and I think everyone expected that, but some people did say that Tank took, a long time to get this guy out of there. So maybe that helps explain it. So we get to the fight, and Tank knocks down Gamboa in round 2. And it got a little interesting because Gamboa gets to the corner, and now he's complaining about his shoe. And I don't know if he was trying to say that's when he ruptured his Achilles, which is I believe is what happened eventually. I don't know if he's trying to say it's a wardrobe malfunction. And to make it even more confusing, they're speaking Spanish, and that makes it harder to understand what's going on. So take me through that series in round 2 and in the corner. What happened there?
Well, first of all, I got to thank you for giving me the opportunity to put this out there in public, because the fans will really find this very interesting.
Yeah.
So I picked up the scorecards, and as I handed it off to the chief executive officer to tally up the scores, the inspector from Gamboa's corner, Tony, said, Jack, he's complaining the sole of his shoe came off. That's exactly what he said to me. So I went in the corner, and I said, which foot? And he pointed to the right, so I picked it up, and I looked at it, and the shoe was pristine.
Right.
There was nothing wrong with the shoe. So I said, there's nothing wrong with this shoe. And then they told, and by the way, I speak a little Spanish, plus there was a Spanish guy in the corner that was kind of interpreting. And they said, no, it's inside. So my first thought was, these son of bitches, he just got knocked down really hard in the second round. They're stalling. They want to give him extra time. They want me to call for an equipment check, a change. I ain't doing it. I said, there's nothing wrong with this shoe. Let's go. So, and I want to make the fans understand this. If a glove tears, the glove is a safety issue and that glove is provided by the commission or the promoter. We have to address it. We have to call time. We have to address it, change out the glove. But the equipment that the fighter brings in, just like a mouthpiece, if something's wrong with that equipment, it's on the onus of the fighter. So he's complaining about a shoe that we, the commission, me as a ref, I had nothing to do with it. He either can continue or he can't. That's my thing. But then not to be like a knucklehead and just disqualify people.
Right.
If there's if I could see something visibly and we could fix it quickly, we'll do it. But the thing you got to look for as a referee, are they stalling for time or is it legitimate? Because if one of the fighters has an advantage, I can't give him timeout to take away that advantage away. So the onus is on the fighter. So they were complaining about that thing, and I said, no, he's got to go. And I said, everybody get out of the ring. Right. And we went with round 3. Now, I believe this is how it happened. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
So then we come back in between 3 and 4, and they're still complaining about the shoe when I went over to the corner, and I said, tape the foot. Tape it in a figure 8 to tighten it up like a cast. I've done that before a million times with fighters when the ring was so wet that they were slipping. So I tell them, tape the shoe, but tape the tape upside down so the sticky part's facing out, and it'll grab the mat. And we finished the fight. So I told them, tape it. So at this juncture, they go to grab the tape, and there's like 10 seconds left in the 1 minute rest. I said, no, not now.
Right.
You get to do it next round in between. They were just trying to stall to give this guy a chance to recover and stuff like that. Next round, they tape it, and we go. Then he gets knocked down again in the 8th round, really hard.
Yep.
And by the way, one of his cornermen not the chief second,
Mm-hmm.
came in the ring 2 or 3 times during the round while the chief second was in the ring, which I would never in a million years. But the rule says I could disqualify the fighter if that happens. Only one guy could be inside the ring, 2 on the apron and 1 on the ground. 2 or 3 times the guy did it. I threw him out. I went over to the after this next incident, I went over to the chief executive officer there, and I said, I want all of the cornermen fined, because it was obvious to me they were stalling. After the 8th round knockdown, to buy him time, they dumped a shit ton of water and ice on him that when he stood up, it came flying off his trunks and ended on the mat. So I said, the heck with it. I said, fight. And I went over and I kicked the ice out of the ring and made them fight. And that's when I told them to go after the round was over. I told them to find the guy. And what happens? Because all that water, the next round, Tank slips in that corner on the water. So these are games that the cornermen play that I got to be aware of. And let me tell you, let me back up and say this. When he went down on the second round, knockdown, when he got up, to me, it appeared he was favoring his right groin. He kind of touched it, and he was moving his leg in a fashion, because I've had groin injuries that I thought he hurt his groin. I even said to him, ¿Qué pasó? And he said, no, I'm okay. But that's what I thought was wrong, his groin. And even a little bit later in the fight, it looked like maybe he had a little problem with his groin. There was nowhere during that fight that anyone told me he hurt his Achilles tendon. And then the fight's over. I'm not at all saying, he tore his Achilles. I don't know what to tell you, because during the fight, all I kept hearing about was the shoe. So.
Right. And then, so that's what I wanted to ask you. So first of all, on one thing you said, it is interesting that a glove is very different than a shoe, because the glove goes through commissions. There's approvals from both sides there on the glove. So that is a totally different thing. And it makes sense that if you saw something physically wrong with the shoe, you would have given him time. But since there wasn't, you had to make a determination. So
here's what I would have done, Curran.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would have done. If the heel was coming off,
yep.
I would have physically took the tape, and I would have either taped it myself or told those guys right then and there, tape it.
Right.
Different story. Something wrong with the short. Something wrong with a cup. If we could fix it quickly, we'll fix it.
Right.
I don't want to take away advantage, but if it's visibly in front of me, like a football player, you wouldn't let them go out with bad equipment.
Right.
But those guys could replace each other. We can't do that here. They can call timeout. We can't do that here. But if it was something like this, I couldn't see it. I didn't believe it after that.
Right.
We have to. He either can fight or he can't.
Right. And now that the article has come out that he did rupture his Achilles, that's what they're saying. They're saying there may be surgery. Now that you know that, and you look back at the situation, do you think that there maybe was an equipment issue inside his foot? Do you think B, he was stalling for time? Or do you think maybe he ruptured his Achilles, hurt himself, and he didn't realize that he hurt himself and he thought it was a problem with the shoe? Like, now that you know that information, how does that change, your thoughts on what happened in those, those early to mid rounds?
Listen, if that guy ruptured his Achilles and he fought 8 rounds more with that Achilles torn like that, I have nothing but the greatest admiration in the world for him. I've never seen anybody that ruptured an Achilles be able to even stand on it. So I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not a doctor. I don't have an X-ray machine. I'm going to let history straighten it out. This will come out, and I'm not going to comment on it. I did what I thought was right at the time. All they told me was about equipment, and I didn't see any problem. And I'm the one who told them, take the goddamn shoe, make it like a cast so he could fight.
Right.
I was surprised that with all their experience of shenanigans, they weren't even smart enough to tape it on their own. I was shocked.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, you have to make that determination, because
exactly.
Corners will try to get any advantage that they can, and it's your job to decide if they're telling the truth or not. And you made that determination there. So round 8, there was the knockdown.
And I want to say something.
Yeah,
I'm not
please.
patting myself on the back.
Yeah.
Watch the video, watch the tape. Or Tank was, now I didn't know this, but what Tank was saying him in between 2 and 3, and I very gently said, you have to fight. And we got 10 more rounds out of that thing of a great fight.
Yes, we did. It was a great.
Say what you want.
Yep, it was a great fight, and with the wardrobe malfunction, with the kill, whatever it was, he was able to continue, and we got some great action. And in
round, what I'm saying is because I put it to him. I'm sorry, you have to do this or this.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And he did. He chose to go on.
Right, and I think that was great for us as fans, for our enjoyment, for his stock, for Tank, for everyone. So
absolutely,
round 8. When we had the knockdown, what I wanted to ask you is Tank, who knocked down Gamboa, was supposed to be in the neutral corner, and then he's kind of almost sprinting at Gamboa, and I think you had to push him back a little bit and say, "Hey, hold on." So what is the exact rule there? Obviously, when there's a knockdown, you send the guy to the neutral corner. How long does he have to stay in that neutral corner? How far can he come out? Is it a few steps? And is he allowed to just sprint at a guy? What's the rule in that situation?
Tank made a emotional mistake that I know he knows better on. Absolutely knows better on. When a fighter is knocked down, the standing fighter goes to depends on what state or where you work, the neutral corner or the furthest corner.
Right.
And stays in the corner till the referee says box. One of the reasons we try to keep our eye on both guys is so they don't come creeping out and jump on this guy before we even say box. So when I turned around after assessing Gamboa, and he was right there, my duty, my responsibility is to put him back in the corner. So he wasted an opportunity that when he really had Gamboa hurt, he didn't get to go with him because I had to put him back in the neutral corner and the clock ran down.
And when you say there's certain places where it's the furthest corner, could a guy be sent back to his own corner if that's the furthest corner?
Absolutely, because his coaches are on the floor. They're not on the canvas. And there's an inspector here with him, so there's not going to be any shenanigans. They're not going to be, they can coach him, they can yell to him and stuff, but he can end up going back to his corner. In California, we want the guy to go to the furthest corner from where the guy's knocked down.
Gotcha.
To keep it straight. Other places do it like that. Some places do it the amateur way, the neutral corner. Problem with that is you can end up very close to the fighter that's down.
Right, and that can happen. So in round 12, Gamboa goes down. And in the broadcast, it was hard to see what you were saying or it was a very tight shot on Gamboa. We saw him go down and he kind of looked up, and then the next thing we knew, the fight was called off. Now, Gamboa is someone that we know he goes down a lot and he gets up a lot, actually. So I'm just curious, what was that like for you? What was your thought process? Take us through the end of the fight.
That was an extremely easy decision for me to make. Because unlike the Harrison-Charlo fight, I got to see the progression of damage in front of me. I didn't think Gamboa had won a round. So now I have in my mind, I have a lopsided fight where there were periods of time where Gamboa took quite a bit of damage to the point where I brought the doctor in more than once to check on his condition. But he was very strong. He wanted to go. His corner wasn't stopping it. There wasn't an opportunity. And then the other thing where I thought there were opportunities where Tank, I believe, could have finished them, but maybe the weight loss came into play where he didn't have the gas in the gas tank to go and finish him earlier. But after that 8th and 9th round, which he took a lot of shots in that 9th round too, I was very hypersensitive that if there was any time where he was going to be taking any punches that were head snapping, where his hands dropped, or punches in bunches where he wasn't defending himself, or hard knockdown, I was probably going to stop it. So when he went down in that 12th, he couldn't win mathematically in the scorecard, and he didn't have a puncher's chance that he demonstrated throughout the bout that he hit Tank with everything he had, and Tank just kind of fluffed it off. And my point was, why take necessary damage? We're done. He's 38 years old. He gave it his best shot. He lost every round and went down 2-3 times. We're done.
And did his team or his camp or he himself say anything to you about the stoppage? Were they happy with it? Were they not happy? Did they communicate about that?
Well, they'll never tell me they're happy with it, but there was not one negative word said with the stoppage.
And so now you look back, 2 weeks, 2 big high profile main events. Are you happy that now you can take a break, and that's not the intensity of a main event right now. You can at least have a nice New Year's here.
Absolutely. Again, Curran, I'm so blessed. I feel so lucky to finally, for years and years and years, I tell everybody, I've been doing this like 21 plus years. And I always say it took me 20 years to be an overnight success.
Right.
People are all of a sudden seeing me a lot, but they don't understand the bullfights, the fights I've done in bull rings in Mexico, and worried about getting home because I didn't want the cartel to cut my kidneys out and sell them, and all the stuff that professional officials go through. I just feel so blessed to be doing fights on this level, and I'm going to always work my ass off to be the best I possibly could be. I'm not trying to be better than anybody else. Just if I could be the best I could be, it'll all work out.
And that was my final question to kind of wrap it up. Obviously we're getting to the end of the decade here. You've been reffing for a long time. Just looking back at your last decade, I mean, there's been a lot of high profile fights, and you've been involved in these big matchups. So how, just a moment of reflection from you at everything that you've achieved in the last decade, and how much longer do you want to continue doing what you're doing, high profile fights, as we look forward into 2020 and beyond?
Well, I'd love to do this forever, but the reality is Father Time is undefeated. I missed a couple of months this year because I had some pretty big surgery, and so I was out for a few months, and I'm very cognizant of my own physical being. I was a firefighter, a fireman for 31 years,
wow.
And I knew when it was time to go there, and I believe in my heart of hearts I'll know when it's time to go here, and I can absolutely promise you and everybody else, if there's ever a question in my mind that I cannot protect those fighters, I'm done in a heartbeat, no questions asked. And if I start making, not one, people make mistakes, but if I'm making repeated mistakes or my concentration isn't what it used to be, I'm done. I'm gone.
And in 2020, do you want more YouTubers or less YouTubers?
I want all the eyes we possibly can get on
Great.
boxing. I'd love to make the younger people fans, let them, and let me tell you, it's so great with YouTube and podcasts and things like you're doing.
Yep.
Because now, in the past, maybe younger people couldn't become fans because they didn't understand the sport. Now it's so much easier to learn about the sport and watch a lot of boxing because you could see it being streamed. You could you could DVD it. You can, you know what I mean? All the ways to see it. The Zone, ESPN Plus. So younger people can now become more educated fans so much easier. So I think it's great.
No, it definitely is. It's the sport is more accessible than ever, and let's hope it keeps growing on different platforms.
One thing I do got to say,
yeah,
it's a totally different sport than it was in my father's era. In our father's era, it's 100 times harder being a referee and a judge now than it ever was, because we are under so much more scrutiny. Curran, when I was a kid, or when I was coming through boxing until the last 20 years, if I missed a fight, the only way I knew who won was if they put a blurb in the newspaper.
Right.
Now, before I step out of the ring, the fights are on YouTube. So the referees they have replays. The referees are under so much more scrutiny, and it's really weird about our sport. People sit there, and these two guys are trying to damage each other, and there's a knucklehead in the middle trying to make sure nobody gets hurt and nobody does anything unfair, and everyone sits there criticizing those two warriors and criticizing those officials. It's like, you try doing what they do or what we do. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the business.
No, it used to be you had to see the blurb in the newspaper to see the results. Now there's a real-time poll on Twitter by guys like me saying, what did you think of the stoppage in the fight? So it's a whole different world there.
Different world.
Jack Reiss, I want to thank you so much for the time, for your great refereeing. I thought you did a tremendous job on these last two fights, and of course before that also, but specifically in recent memory. And I can't wait to see what you do in 2020. If I said this before last time we spoke, if there's a big fight and I see that Jack Reiss is the referee, I feel confident that the right thing's going to happen, that we're going to get our money's worth, and the fighters will be safe. So thank you so much for taking the time.